Wow, that's quite an introduction. Thanks, Alex. I was saying to Alex just before that he was showing me the stage, and I said to him that I used to do a bit of acting when I was younger. And the last time I was on a stage like this, which I think is called a proscenium arch or something like that, I was playing Gregory in Gregory's Girl. And that's the last time I've been on a stage and until this time. And that's a lot of years ago. So I probably qualify as one of the old people in the room, I think. So I'm one of the people that read these. I'm not sure if I need. I remember the training when I was acting. They said you must speak from your diaphragm. So you imagine that you're speaking to the back of the room. Do I need the microphone? Okay, I'll have the microphone then. So yeah. Anyway, so my name is Peter Grant. And I'm head of media effectiveness at Boots. And you've probably read in the press over the last year or so that Boots is doing pretty well. So we've had something like, I think it's about 9 quarters of consecutive growth, something like that. So we came out of the pandemic really, really quite well, and it's a wonderful place to work. But it hasn't always been that way. I joined the business about 5 years ago, and one of the first things I was asked to look at was how many KPIs we have in the marketing team. After about 3 months of pulling out all the dashboards from all over the place, I'd counted 127. So we had 127 KPIs, and I looked at them and I thought, well, they can't all be KPIs. They can't all be key performance indicators, can they? I thought, no, they can't be. Well, what about PIs? Have we got 120 PIs? And we went, no, they're not all performance indicators either. And in actual fact, a lot of them aren't even indicators. So we had this massive things that we were all paying attention to in different ways. And herein lies the problem. Most of them weren't telling us anything about commercial outcomes. We'd heard quite a bit in the session before about the importance of commercial outcomes. Just as an aside, Alex said to me that this session is intended to be a light-hearted session. I wasn't sure what he meant, but having seen the session before last and the kind of Squid Game type thing that was going on, I understand what he means now. So we have all of these KPIs, all fighting for attention in the business, and none of them really getting anywhere. And I think what it was really was, for me, it wasn't about the amount of things that people are attending to. So, this has been touched on a little bit today, but not really put this way. I think what we're seeing across society and in our business is a context collapse. We've talked about the power of brand. I think you talked earlier about being able to see things kind of within context. There's the Armani handbag example, which again is about it's like this in that context and like that in a different context. There's a context collapse. I was thinking about this the other day, and I said to my son, he's 17, he's a real STEM type, not the most creative one in the family. And I said to him, what would you do if a tiger was running towards you? And he went, it would just eat me. I'd lie down and it would eat me. I went, all right, okay. He asked me, and I said what I said. And then I asked my daughter, who wants to be an architect, so she's quite mathematical as well, but a bit more creative. And I asked her the same question. She said, I would climb up a ladder. She imagined that there would be a ladder for her to climb up and escape. And then they asked me what I would do, and I said, well, I'd just stay in the house and keep the doors closed. And they said, well, that's cheating. I said, well, the way in which you answer that question is all down to the context, isn't it? Because the tiger running towards you has got your attention. It either matters enormously in terms of life and death, or it doesn't matter at all. So we've heard a little bit today about the quality of the attention, but it's the context. It's the context within which you're consuming it that is important. Now, whether you call that brand building and building up a latent amount of equity and awareness for your brand so that you then can grab people's attention the right way, or whether it's more about, as it is for Boots with younger people, finding ways of building that context for them at a time when they're consuming media on platforms which is increasingly fracturing and fragmenting that attention. That's the real challenge for, I think, trying to build a context or build a brand in a digital-first world with the behaviours that we see from young people with mobile phones. So that's that bit. So anyway, back to Boots and a little bit about our journey. So the point of that context bit is that we heard earlier how important it is to understand what your superordinate KPI is in the business, and we're a commercial operation, so straight away there should be a context for what you're doing. We're here to make money. We're here to drive value for the shareholders. If anybody thinks any different to that in a commercial operation, you're not going to last very long. So that's the first thing we did with those 127 KPIs. We said, well, how many of these are actually talking about financial outcomes? And very few of them were. And bringing it right back to the media world, we've had econometric modelling in Boots for probably about 15 years, but we've paid very little attention to it for probably at least 10 or 12 of those years. But having gone through this exercise and said what really matters, particularly to the finance types in a business, is how much money you're making for the money that they're taking out of the bank and giving you to invest and do the things that you like to do. So we arrived at a superordinate metric, which is return on investment for our media. And and everybody's mobilized around that, and we use that to inform the big decisions around how much money should we invest. So I have conversations with the finance team at the start of the year, and we say, well, how much should we invest in media? Should it be this number, that number, or a different number? How much more could we invest? If we did 5 million more, 10 million less, how would that impact the bottom line? We also use it for more granular decision making, how much should go into each channel, and we can do that because we've got that level of resolution within the econometric modelling. So that works really well, but it's only one lens on the world, and I'm a sceptical type, and despite the level of traction that we've got in the business of that sort of thing, I believe that you should triangulate. I believe that you should get other views. I like to be wrong. I like to be proven wrong, and I like to prove others wrong as well. I'm quite a contrarian, so if I see something that is absolute, then I think, well, no, it can't be so. How about looking at it a different way? So this is where the test and learn bit comes in for us. So we've pulled in another supplier who is able to provide a more bottom-up, more granular view of return on investment. So we have this big superordinate measure of return on investment, which is informed by econometric modelling and by constant test and learn. So that's that bit. I'll just check my notes to see where I'm getting up to. So we've done all of that, and here's a picture of a rat. So none of that really helps us to understand why some media works and why some media doesn't work. The old 50%, we know 50% works, but not 50%. I mean, that still rings true now. And I didn't know either. I'm not a marketeer, so I had no preconceptions about why. I know that creative plays a part, and I know you've got to get it in the right place, and I know people have got to see it. So I kind of knew a little bit about it, but about a year ago, I think Mike at Lumen was probably one of the first to call me. I started returning some calls from the different suppliers who claim that they can link their service or their view of the world, whether it's attention or something else, to financial outcomes. And I thought, okay, well, I don't know, so I'll get them all together. And it was really motivated by a piece of research that I read by a scientist called Jaak Panksepp. And he became famous in the 60s for his work that he did with rats. And he famously discovered that if you tickle a rat, it giggles. It giggles ultrasonically. So you need special equipment to be able to hear it, of course. But that's probably why they make such good pets. But the bit that was really fascinating for me is that he discovered an area of the brain called the play zone. And he did some amazing experiments, such was his genius. And he discovered that a rat that was only 10% bigger than another rat could pin its adversary 100% of the time if it wanted to do. But over iterations of the game, he discovered that didn't happen. And what happened is the younger, smaller rat wins at almost exactly 30% of the time. So the larger rat allows the young rat, or the smaller rat, to win. And this part of the brain, which is he coined the play zone, exists in all mammals. So this idea of play, reciprocal voluntary play, exists in all of us. And the importance of that is that he discovered that if you deny a juvenile rat play, then it doesn't develop cognitively, it doesn't develop emotionally, it doesn't develop socially. They can't even mate If you deny a male rat play when it's a juvenile, it can't even reproduce. So it's hugely important. And so what's going on there? There's a whole load of developmental stuff going on. There's a whole load of stepping into the unknown. So I thought, well, I'll get all of the suppliers together in a room and I'll see what happens. And that's what I did. So we've got all these guys, and this really was like the Hunger Games. I briefed them all. I said, right, Christmas is about this time last year. We're about to go into Christmas. We've got loads of data. You can have all of the data that you want. You tell me that you can do what you can do. You've been telling me this. So here you go. Have at it. Have the data, and then we'll reconvene in the new year. And you tell me what you've learned about our Christmas campaign. And that's what we did. So they all had the data. They all ran it through their own views of the world up to Christmas, and we convened on April the 20th this year. They all had a 15-minute brief. You got 15 minutes. We're all in the room. We're going to approach this with a spirit of play. It's going to be tense. It might be dangerous for one or two of you, but let's see what we can learn. And we had a great session, an absolutely fantastic session. There was not quite as much tension as we saw about 15 minutes ago, but there was a fair bit of tension. For the most part, it was pretty well behaved. And the important bit for our business was that, well, the important bit for me is that because I'm not a marketer, I wanted to find a way of getting people to work together, to build something together, because I don't have any idea about really how to do this stuff. But I thought, if we can use lots of people's brains and get them working together in the right spirit, then we might be able to do that. And we came out with 2 or 3 pages of insights, which we've then been able to use for the planning of this Christmas campaign. And System 1 and Mesh are part of that. They've worked with us for some time. And we've got Ubiquity on board as our econometrics partner. So that bit worked really, really well. So faith and science. What I mean by this really is, I think at the heart of the religious enterprise is this idea of faith. We've touched on this a little bit today, and this for me is really about having the courage to take steps that you otherwise wouldn't take. We were chatting in the reception earlier today, and I believe Mark Ritson was talking a little bit about some of this yesterday, how there is an increasing lack of courage and bravery, if you like, in our world for various reasons, because either something ends up in litigation very quickly, or there's a degeneration into a polarized debate and somebody's become offended about something, and there's a real risk that everything is just descending into a grey mare. And so what I wanted to do is to make sure that we can avoid that wherever possible, avoid that trap wherever possible. And I think the enabler for me on this, the enabler to take those steps into the unknown, is to embrace the spirit of curiosity. I mean, I used to cycle across race quite a bit, and anybody that's done that sort of thing, it's a crazy event, and you spend 60 minutes racing around a single track, and there are very few places to pass. And when the race starts, you scream away from the start, and I didn't know why people were doing this, but it soon becomes evident because there's a single track around the course, and you can very quickly get locked into following somebody else, and you're following. You're making progress, but you're following. And the only way in which you can get ahead of the competition is if you're prepared to go off the beaten track and take some risks. And I did that a few times, and you might hit a tree, or you might just end up on your face in a sand pit. But that's the way in which you can actually get ahead of your competition. And I'm a competitive type, so back at Boots, I encourage people through curiosity to ask questions about what might not be working, and then take some risks. Just gamble a little bit. Replace fear with bravery. I'm conscious I'm nearly running out of time, so I'll quickly rattle through this last bit. This is probably the most important bit. The only way in which any organisation such as Boots can secure funding to invest and do lots of these wonderful things that we're talking about is if you have absolute trust in your business. And that's what I mean by this, really. And so what I try to practice and what I encourage others around me to practice is a radical form of truth. And it's just be truthful with everything that you do, particularly when you're dealing with the finance team internally. There is a little bit of a temptation, as we all know, within the marketing world to to shout and hurrah and celebrate everything that we do, but not everything works. And the finance and more prosaic types in the business, they know that, they see through that. So you've got to be absolutely credible, otherwise you won't be able to secure the funds that you maybe deserve to do. And that means when things go wrong, as they do, I mean, we had one about a year ago, the return on investment wasn't quite so good. And there was a lot of tension in the room about, and there was thoughts around how can we position this, how can we change the context, how can we omit some information that might make it look a little bit better than it was. But they smell that coming. You know, you can't do that. Finance people have got a nose for that sort of thing. They know when they smell a rat or when they tickle a rat. So you know, please, if I've got one piece of advice, avoid the temptation of doing that. And if you can build a strong relationship with the finance team, then you will, and you're doing well, and you're doing what you're supposed to do well, then you will be able to secure the funds to do the things that we all want to be able to do. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. How many pet rats do you have?
We have none at the moment. We've got 2 pet rabbits.